You may have heard, but it appears California will very likely require by state law a buyer-broker representation agreement. Here we're looking at Assembly Bill 2992, Real Estate Law Buyer-Broker Representation Agreement, and it appears to be halfway through the legislative process to become enacted a law. Here's a summary down here, and this states that the bill would require a buyer's agent and a buyer to execute a buyer-broker representation agreement as soon as practicable, but no later than the execution of the buyer's offer to purchase real property. Well, you could easily make the case that as soon as practicable could be at the first showing, which is the same requirement as the realtor representation agreement from the NAR settlement. And then it goes on to say, this bill would prohibit the representation agreement from lasting longer than 3 months from the date of the agreement, which is the same that we have in the C.A.R form, the BRBC. It also goes on to say this bill would provide the violation of these provisions by a licensed person under real estate law, so state real estate law, is a crime. And if you think about it, so the representation requirement now as it stands is just for realtors. If you are a member of NAR, if you're a realtor using a realtor affiliated MLS, you're required to have that representation agreement. If you're an independent licensee, maybe you're a real estate broker, you have your broker license from the Department of Real Estate for the state of California, you're not required to follow these NAR settlement provisions. You're not required to have a representation agreement. You're not required to not charge a commission and offer a cooperating broker compensation. Independent agents are effectively exempt from the NAR settlement. But this would change that because this creates a blanket state law that would encompass all real estate licensees. There's actually the bill text here. I won't read it. That would be boring. But if you want to read it, I will link to this and you can look at it yourself and see. But if you really want to know what this is, go look at the C.A.R BRBC now, because as I read through the details here, everything is virtually identical to what is in the BRBC form. So this is just taking that realtor requirement and extending it to all licensees through a statewide law. Let's jump back though, because I actually watched the hearing, and you can see that when this went to this committee, and you can watch the video of the legislator that made the proposal, the author of the bill, and then you see that this passed. The committee action passed 12-0, so 12-4 voting in favor of enacting this legislation, or at least proceeding it to the next stage in creating a law. But there was no opposition, and it's clearly bipartisan in terms of support. So that tells me that there's a very high likelihood that all real estate licensees are going to be subject to a new law, maybe happening next year. I have no idea how long these things take, but it's coming. And what's interesting too is that there were 2 lobbyists that spoke. You can see the names down here, and you can see both of these people speak at the hearing. One was a lobbyist sent by C.A.R, and I thought about it, and that makes sense because C.A.R doesn't want independent or non-realtor licensees to have any advantage. I'm sure there's some ostensible benevolent reason on why they came and spoke in favor of this law of California requiring that all licensees have a buyer representation agreement. So it makes sense that, I mean, just from a practical standpoint for their institution, they're going to want to eliminate any advantage that not being a member would offer. And right now, non-members have the advantage of not being subject to the whole NAR settlement. They can do cooperating broker commission. They can show buyers homes without the representation agreement. But this would eliminate that. So they have their lobbyist. And then there's another lobbyist that spoke. You can actually click on the name of the lobbyist and go down and see who they're lobbying on behalf of. But this lobbyist was there on behalf of Zillow. So Zillow sent a lobbyist to the hearing. It's important enough for Zillow to send a lobbyist to a hearing to speak in favor of. Why would Zillow do that? Well, I mean, put whatever you think the reason is in a comment. The reason that I think that Zillow had someone there is because how does Zillow get paid? Zillow gets paid from real estate agents that are paying to be in their Flex program or Premier, whatever their program du jour is for creating leads and selling them to real estate licensees. So it's in Zillow's financial interest to have everyone fit into the agent mold and keep a cohesive system of real estate licensees that all abide by the same rules and pay into Zillow's system, just like C.A.R. So it makes sense why they have those two lobbyists there. I'm not saying this is a bad thing either. I mean, it just, as I mentioned in my other commission video, yes, there are exceptions, like independent agents can be exempt from the cooperating broker compensation changes that NAR has implemented. But I was looking at different lawsuits. I was actually reading about some lawsuits that were not the Sitzer Burnett lawsuit, other lawsuits, copycat lawsuits. And they're all predicated on this idea that cooperating broker compensation is a disservice to sellers. So if you follow the cooperating broker compensation model, even though I think it's highly misunderstood, that opens you up to legal risk in the future. So I think organically that the industry as a whole is going to evolve away from the cooperating broker compensation. And whether you're a realtor or a non-realtor real estate agent or real estate broker, I think that in the future, everyone's going to charge the seller a fee, charge the buyer a fee. Even if the buyer is reimbursed by the seller through a concession or seller credit through escrow is irrelevant. You're still going to have to charge the buyer fee. And if you think about it, who has really gotten the short end of the stick when agents didn't have a buyer representation agreement? Buyer's agents. Buyer's agents were the ones getting hosed. Buyer's agents were the ones that were working for free, only to have a completely disloyal client run off with someone else that they met at an open house. So there was all sorts of unethical behavior taking place on behalf of clients that just that mistreated buyer's agents. So I think that ultimately, as much as I don't like how regimented things are becoming, I think the net effect is not going to be negative. So I think that we'll all adapt and move on, and this whole change, this transition that we're going from cooperating commission to now each party paying their own. I think that everyone's going to adapt and we're going to move on. Everyone's going to get paid just the same in the end. It's not going to change much. It's not going to have a net effect, but it will protect buyer's agents from getting hosed from buyers that exploited buyer's agents that worked for free, that worked on spec, and didn't take into consideration that buyer's agents are working for free unless a transaction closes. So that's it. Look out for AB 2992. I will get a link right here and I will put it at the bottom of the description if you want to watch this hearing or you want to read the bill itself. Thank you for watching.